Okay, so I'm Katie Bannon. I'm the Home Grant Manager with the city.
And I'm Jeff Hasser. I'm the Community Development Block Grant Manager for the city.
And this webinar today is about the Lift Indy program and the letter of intent information that was just made available via email and on our website. So we're going to make this presentation available after the webinar, both as a PDF of the PowerPoint and a recorded video, so someone can listen along that wasn't able to attend today. All phones are muted. Any questions that you may have, you can type in the chat box, and we'll probably answer most of those at the end, but some we may be able to do as we go along. So the Lift Indy program is really a response to the Hogshead vision for Indianapolis neighborhoods, looking at how the city can be more proactive about using CDBG and home dollars to target specific areas for redevelopment in the future. Many of you may know this already, but just to give a brief background about these funds, so CDBG, or Community Development Block Grant, is a HUD grant that provides a flexible use of funds specifically for the benefit of low to moderate income individuals and communities. This is a grant that the city receives every year. The Home Investment Partnerships Program, or HOME grant, is another HUD grant that funds affordable rental and home ownership housing opportunities for low-income households in Indianapolis. Looking at our goals for Lift Indy, we want to improve regional competitiveness, so not just competitiveness with Indianapolis suburbs or even within Indiana, but throughout the nation, looking at our peer cities and how we can compete better with them for jobs and residents. We want to develop new neighborhood nodes and villages, areas where people want to be in, live in. We want to do equitable revitalization, so making sure that displacement is not a part of revitalization, that long-term residents can benefit from the improvements in their neighborhoods. Long-term affordability in desirable neighborhoods is also another goal of the program. We want to increase resident incomes and property values, also increase density, and make sure there are multiple transportation options for households living and working in the neighborhood, and also playing in the neighborhood. As you can see there, live, work, play areas. We also want to increase the need for public development subsidy in the long term, that we'll have more areas of our city that have market demand for development, and we can move on to other areas that still need this assistance. So Lift Indy is a multi-year commitment of CDBG and home funding in a focused area, approximately a quarter-mile radius area. We're looking to really coordinate a lot more with other portions of the Department of Metropolitan Development, other areas of the city, and also a lot more project coordination between DMD and our project sponsors throughout. This is really meant to be an implementation tool, not a planning tool. We want to be implementing the plans that already exist. I'm going to take a sip here. Okay. This is just looking at our first year of the Lift Indy program and the home investment that's available. So you can see total in the lower right-hand corner, it'll be about $4.7 million. This is anticipated based on approximately current funding levels with typical decreases. Obviously, we don't really know what's going to happen with the next year's funding, but this is looking at an approximation.
So we actually got a question about that. Are these CDBG and home funds at risk due to the new president's initiatives, or are they allocated, dedicated to be spent? So we are talking about 2018 funds. So right now the budget that we're actually talking about is for 2017 funds. So we obviously can't anticipate what Congress is going to decide, but what we can do is try to plan and work ahead and just not let, whatever Congress decides to determine, how we want to kind of invest our funds. So even if there is a reduction, we do always anticipate a reduction for funds and are pretty conservative about that. But it is something that is a potential risk. We always encourage, if you think these funds are strong, you can advocate for them, but Yes, we don't know exactly for this budget, but we are talking about actually next year's budget.
So as far as eligible applicants for Lift Indy, we require that at least one organization cannot propose to complete all of the CDBG and home projects as the project sponsor. This is a larger amount of funding. We expect a greater diversity of projects, and so we want your team to be more diverse as well, with different organizations specializing in and leading different projects that are part of your overall proposal. At least one member of the development team must have experience managing Indianapolis and CDBG Indianapolis, CDBG, or home construction projects. Obviously, if there are multiple members that have that experience, that's great. And then we'd also want your development team to include a community housing development organization, or a CHODO, as a member of the team. That's a home designation. If you have questions about what's involved in becoming a CHODO, or if you can qualify as a CHODO right now, if you already are, feel free to contact me and I can walk you through the details of that.
We had a quick question just to jump back a little bit. The 4.7 million is a grand total for one neighborhood. So for each neighborhood, of course, that is just anticipated for that first neighborhood. And again, just a reminder that all dollar amounts are included are based on consistent funding throughout all 3 years. So it'd probably be a little less than that.
So I went through what's required for eligible applicants. We also strongly encourage multiple members of the development team to have experience with a CDBG or home construction project. And then at least one member of the development team be a non-traditional partner. So some examples we had included, but definitely not limited to, would be a hospital, maybe an anchor institution like that, or university, local business, a social service provider, a library, or a neighborhood association. Looking at eligible areas for the Lift Indy program, the focus of projects must be in a quarter-mile radius. I would say this is not like a hard and fast radius, that if something's slightly outside that, we wouldn't consider it. But we would want to talk through that with you to make sure it's still meeting the intent of that. Your area must be within one of the larger designated Lift Indy eligible areas. So we included with our email and on our website the Lift Indy eligible areas map. All the areas designated on that map that are as eligible are within the Neighborhood Revitalization Strategy, or NRSA. But we also have a map so you know where those boundaries are if you have questions about why was my neighborhood not included, maybe because it's not in the NRSA. The NRSA provides us a lot more flexibility in the use of CDBG as a HUD designation. You must have a neighborhood plan with a public input component. Again, we're trying to implement an existing plan, so we want to make sure this is something that the neighborhood has led and wanted to see happen in their neighborhood. And the zoning within the proposed area must be majority residential. This is a CDBG HUD regulation, so it's not something we have a lot of flexibility on. Again, if you have questions about an area you're looking at, Jeff's going to go through the timeline in a little bit, but the earlier we can talk you through these things to make sure, don't go through all this hassle and then you can realize all the way at the end, like, oh, this actually isn't even going to work for this area. Consult us ahead of time. So here's just looking real quickly at that map of the Lift Indy eligible areas. And if you need this or the link to the Google map that you can zoom in and really look in more detail, oh, here it is on our next slide. Here it is, or we can also email it to you as well. We strongly encourage that you plan near or on transit routes. Areas that have potential for both commercial and residential, since we are looking at the development of new neighborhood nodes that would have a diversity of uses. It's important to choose an area that has that potential. So we've already had a few questions about how these eligible areas were determined. So DMD engaged a consultant, the Reinvestment Fund, out of Milwaukee, to develop a market value analysis for Indianapolis. This is something they've done for a number of communities throughout the country, and has been something that's been specifically used to concentrate CDBG and home funding in strategic areas. So the data factors include median sales price variance, distressed sales, properties with signs of distress, density of housing, percentage of owner-occupied and rental housing, percentage of residential properties with permits, and percentage of newly built properties. We anticipate continuing to work with TRF over the next few years to refine these data points and improve the approach. I also mentioned before that the projects have to be within the NRSA. So when we're looking at eligible projects, we require that project proposals include at least two of the two key uses below for these funds. So home ownership, rental, economic development, and placemaking. We don't want a project or a proposal with this amount of funding that really just does one of those four uses of these funds. We want to see at least two. Again, all projects using CDBG or home must meet HUD eligibility requirements. So if you're not sure what you're planning would meet those requirements, make sure you contact us for more information. Developing new or existing neighborhood nodes and villages is what we're really aiming to do. All CDBG and home funds are paid on a reimbursement basis for projects. This is not exclusive to Lift Indy. This is any CDBG or home funding. So you need to be prepared for that. And then at least $500,000 of the total CDBG allocation as a part of the Lift Indy program will be structured as a loan that would be repayable to the city of Indianapolis. Or you can have a minimum of one project within your proposal, which will involve a Section 108 loan. If you want more information about either of those things, you can contact Jeff. So we actually strongly encourage including all four of the key uses below. The more diverse the neighborhood node, the better. We also want to see mixed income housing. We know the benefits of having a mixed income neighborhood, mixed income buildings, and also mixed use buildings, adding that activity in the neighborhood node. We also encourage layering of investments, so including but not limited to new market tax credits, the low income housing tax credits, tax increment financing, tax abatement, brownfield funding, philanthropic sources, private sources, etc. And we're really willing to work with you on a lot of those things as well. If you want us to attend meetings, if you want us to make the contacts with some DMD staff that manage some of that funding, such as TIF, we're happy to do that and work alongside you throughout. So now we're going to give a couple example proposals, and some of you may have seen this before, but just to give an idea of how projects can have phasing throughout and use different sources.
One of the questions that popped up are what are the terms of the $500,000 CDBG loan? That will probably depend on the project and what is proposed, but typically we have been okay with a little 0% interest, you know, and generally we don't like to go longer than 5 years. But again, that depends on the project, cash flow, what the proposal is, etc.
So these are really simplified scenarios, but just to give you kind of an idea. So particularly maybe in my neighborhood, Katie's neighborhood, the neighborhood's requesting that they want some trails, that they have a need for a licensed daycare and a neighborhood restaurant. In their assets right now, they have low housing vacancy, which is great, and they also have a hospital anchor institution. So just some photos to kind of give you an idea. On the top left, there's the daycare. Top right, maybe a rehab of a small multifamily building for rental housing. On the bottom right, trail. On the bottom left there, maybe it's new medium density homeownership opportunities on a brownfield site. I guess it would have helped if I saw this slide first so I can remember what all those four photos were of. But you can see here there's 8 development team members proposed as part of this project. So KDCDC would be the lead applicant, but there's several other development team members that are part of this. Maybe there's a nonprofit that has a specialization in developing daycare, or there's an environmental consultant that's really going to be key with that brownfield redevelopment. Parks Foundation maybe has some funding to provide to that trail. And you can see the mix too of home would be the rental and home ownership. And the home ownership has both CDBG and home within it. And then CDBG funds the economic development activities as well as the placemaking, the trail. Looking at a timeline, so this would be a project that was selected to be the Lift Indy area in 2018. So the first year, that existing rental project, it's just a rehab, it's small, that's something that maybe construction can get started on right away. The home ownership project is going to be the longest time frame, knowing that it needs some site work and remediation. It's just a more phased project. So you can kind of see daycare, restaurant are more medium-term projects, and then the trail is a longer-term project as well. Hand it off to Jeff for his example.
Yeah, we'll talk about my neighborhood now. My neighborhood requested a grocery store, less blighted abandoned properties, public space for events, but some of the assets are a strong potential commercial corridor, and then site control of vacant parcels as well. You can see some of the pictures that we have here of the vacant building, public space, grocery store, etc. And so my projects are first multifamily housing, and then home ownership initiative involving demolishing of properties and rebuilding as row houses, where I'm partnering with Katie CDC and a developer. Facade program for existing businesses run out of my CDC. A grocery store of $1.5 million with Jeff CDC, Blue Consulting, and Green Development, and then a placemaking initiative to develop that public space. So you can see that I have 7 development partners on my team. And then you can see what I anticipated is being awarded in 2019. And then, so all that 20, I will know, if I'm a 2019 designee, I'm going to know in 2018. And we'll get into the timeline in a bit. But so I can start all that pre-development and start construction. But you can also see that the grocery store, a more long-term project, really isn't completed until 2023, which can happen. I don't think we want to go too far, but we understand certain projects are going to require a little bit more time than others to complete. And we'll work with those development teams in order to make sure that those are on track, are moving appropriately, but that we're also being kind of flexible to, or more sensitive to longer term projects. So again, talking about the timeline, you'll see on March 17th, we released the letters of intent, although be it a little at the end of the day, Friday. Then today, obviously, we're hosting the webinar. This is one that we really want to call attention to, and we'll talk a little bit about in the next slide, but the March 30th, we're asking interested applicants to email a map of their intended focus areas to be the CDBG and home manager to confirm eligibility. And then Lift Indy letters on April 13th are due to DMD by noon. Again, I want to remember or really reiterate, this is April 13th, Lift Indy letters of intent are due to DMD by noon. If they are not submitted by noon, they are not going to be considered, and you can submit them early. April 28th, if necessary, DMD emails clarification questions to any applicants, and then May 2nd, responses to those clarification letters. We understand this is a tight turnaround. We know this is going to be, the LOI is going to be kind of high level, so we're hoping that they're more kind of clarification, pretty easy questions for your team to respond to. We wanted to give at least a few days for you to respond. So, and the other thing I would reiterate is that getting clarification questions or not getting clarification questions is not an indication that you will be selected as a finalist. That is just for the review team's benefit. And then May 4th, Lift Indy finalists will be announced. May 12th, we're going to require that all Lift Indy finalists be required to attend a workshop, and that will be an all-day workshop. Plan on it being an all-day workshop at least. So as of right now, on your calendar, I would pay, if you're serious about applying for Lift Indy, I would put it on May 12th on your calendar to say, this is the day I'm blocking off. We will expect the development team, or at least the majority of the development team, to be there. June 1st, so in between May 12th and June 1st, Katie and I are going to work with all the development team finalists in order to finalize their projects, their proposal to present to our review team. And then June 1st, detailed budgets and performance will be due. And then on June 5th and 6th, we're going to present to the review team, or Lift Indy finalists will present to those review teams. So the next key date, again, I mentioned this before, March 30th, you need to email intended focus area map to the CDBG and home manager, Katie and myself. We want to be able to see what you're intending to focus on, what that area is, and then hopefully kind of work with you to know what's going on. We really want this to be more communications prior to application for this program, and this is one way that we kind of hope that will go. If items change, if your focus area evolves, etc., as long as you stay in contact with us, that should be okay. And again, we just need a map. It doesn't need to be much more than an email with a map of the quarter-mile radius focus area submitted to us. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the selection process. For the Lift Indy finalists, a team of city staff will review the initial LOIs and make a determination of between 2 to 4 finalists. We wanted that flexibility. We don't know how many applicants we're going to get. We don't know how many finalists we want to select, but we wanted to give a little bit of flexibility. We do kind of anticipate 3 is generally what we have in our minds, though. Lift Indy designee, DMD will engage a selection of community partners to participate in reviewing the finalist proposals and making a recommendation for the Lift Indy designated area and team. Finalists will not know who those community partners are. We want to avoid any type of advocation outside of the Lift Indy process to make sure we have fair and equal playing field for all the finalists. The other part we talked about is DMD as a development partner. Katie and I really want to provide you with home and CDBG recommendations on funding and structure. Even after you're designated a Lift Indy neighborhood, we want to be able to advocate for funding and resources within the city and outside the city. We're also going to have funds available to pay third-party technical assistance on eligible projects. We'll have regular communication throughout project completion. But we also want to stress that this is not a blank check. If you are approved with your projects and your development team, it is not a, here is the CDBG and home dollars, go have at it. This is going to be coordination, monthly meetings, checking up on development, on progress, and working with you throughout it. So if both sides, if both the development team and DMD don't agree on a project, it's at a stalemate. We both need to agree. We both need to kind of go through and agree to it. But again, we anticipate that the projects proposed, that would be pretty similar to what's being developed, and then have some flexibility as things do come up and as we do need to kind of evolve. So I want to talk a little bit about the LOI documents. So we have a few, the eligibility, the eligible areas map, the key dates, the narrative, the project matrix, the FAQ, which we're planning to update weekly, and the submission guidance. So the narrative is probably one of your most important documents. It's a maximum of 5 pages with a minimum font size of 11, Times New Roman and Calibri is preferred, and then normal margins, which is those 1-inch indentation. I really want to stress this a lot is, again, we talked about if you submit late, we're not going to review it. If you are outside of these submission requirements, we are not going to review it. Again, we want to provide equal playing field for all potential applicants, and we want to encourage concise response in the narrative so that we're not getting too bogged down. We know, and you have a lot of things that you want to say about these neighborhoods, about your organizations, etc. But we also know a lot of your organizations. The things we probably know about you, you probably don't need to elaborate in. We really want to see what this proposal is and how this is unique. It's going to have 5 sections, which is the vision, team, area, projects, and then budget and leverage, which are all detailed in the narrative section. Some of our suggestions that we have for the narrative: be concise. Again, you only have 5 pages. You need to use those wisely. Don't repeat information that is available in other sections if you don't think it will be helpful. Remember, again, this is a high-level proposal. You don't need to get into the nitty-gritty. Show how the projects work in coordination and complement each other. We really want to see this as a comprehensive approach, and it's kind of, this narrative is the perfect opportunity to show how they work in conjunction with each other. The quicker and easier the review team can find reference documents and attachments, the happier they are. So this is something that we always stress in all of our applications is, if you're saying, hey, if you look in this neighborhood plan on page 13 and we go there and it's not on page 13, or we're scrambling around to find it, that really creates a lot of time and time we're spending on looking for things in your plan as opposed to focusing on what your overall plan is. So something we want to talk about. And then last but not least is talk to Katie and I, talk to the CDBG and home staff. We really want to provide you input, bounce ideas off of us, talk to us. This is meant to be a coordination between DMD and these applicants. We're not going to ever say, hey, if you do this, you're definitely going to get funding. But we might say, hey, if you structured CDBG or home in this way, it might create a better project or less issues and create a stronger proposal. The attachments, again, you see the narrative for a description of what is required in the attachments. Each attachment or document should be a separate digital document with a unique name. So do not include all of them as one PDF. We see this occasionally. It's very, very, very difficult to review that. So each one should be a separate digital document in these flash drives that are submitted. And then long documents like the neighborhood plan do not need to be included in their entirety in paper. Just include the particular relevant sections or highlight any relevant attachment sections. That's what's most important to us. We don't need a complete printed out copy of your neighborhood plan. Don't waste that much paper on these. Next is the project matrix, which instructions page included on the first tab. And again, this is divided into development team, current projects, proposed projects, site control, and priority matrix. And here are some of the anticipated frequently asked questions that we brought up, and I think some of these address some of the questions we have. So do I have to partner with other organizations? Yes. Due to the size of the award, DMD is requiring multiple organizations to partner together in an application. As you saw with Katie and I's proposal for our neighborhoods, we included 7 and 8. It doesn't need to be 7 and 8. That can be a lot, but it can just not be one organization, and we need to be able to see that those organizations, if you would propose 2 or 3, that those organizations really could handle the amount of work and project scope that we're proposing. The development team will consist of a single lead applicant responsible for organizing the team and communicating with DMD staff. Do not include general letters of support. These will be discarded. So those letters from your city councilors or neighborhood groups or anyone that is not directly a part of the development team and tackling some projects, we don't want any kind of letters of support, anything like that. We generally expect if you're developing a neighborhood plan and you can explain your community buy-in, then we can go from there. But those letters are not going to be included in the proposal.
Yeah, I would say the exception is if like the neighborhood association's actually putting some money towards it, or volunteers, something very specific to the projects you're proposing.
If the applicant is selected as a finalist, we do allow additional members of the development team can be included as the proposal evolves. So we want to provide a little bit of flexibility if you think, hey, this organization, just kind of became available, where was able to kind of commit to this proposal, then that works for us. We want to be able to work with you. So if we aren't selected or ineligible this year, will there be an opportunity next year? DMD would like to continue to designate a Lift Indy area once a year. So we had reference of this, I believe the question was, is there a priority for which neighborhoods will start first, or will they start simultaneously? Again, we're designating one neighborhood each year, and then they have a kind of a 3-year period of funding. And the way that works, theoretically, if we continue with the project, if we have sufficient funds, that we'll have kind of 3 active proposals at one time. So wanted to give you kind of an idea about that. So this will depend on the success of the program and, again, the availability of CDBG and home funding. And applicants are always eligible to apply for the general construction round. The application will be released in June and due in July. So should I incur costs in order to show project readiness? This is another one. DMD encourages organizations to not incur any costs associated with project development during the LOI phase of the application. And it's a reminder, any costs incurred during that time are not reimbursable with CDBG or home funds. Incurring costs does not guarantee a stronger proposal, and development teams should only incur those project costs if the organization anticipates incurring those costs regardless of CDBG or home funding. We really don't want organizations to take on financial burdens because of they think that they will get nominated for this. So it's, again, something that we want to make sure that organizations are kind of aware of. Can my organization be on multiple proposals? An organization can be on multiple development team proposals for different neighborhoods and different lead applicants. There is no limit. So if you have 3 priority areas that you really want to be the lead applicant on, theoretically you could submit 3 LOIs for each of those areas as the lead applicant, and 4 separate focus areas. And each focus area will need its own separate LOI documents. That said, we don't encourage this because we would rather have one high-quality LOI application as opposed to 3 ones that maybe have some middling success. So, or have some a limited amount of time spent on it because of the other time needed for the LOIs. So we would really, really strongly recommend that you would select just one area and only be the lead applicant on one. That said, you can still be on multiple development teams providing support for other organizations. What if our focus area is only partially in an eligible area? A proposed quarter-mile focus area can be only partially within one of the Lift Indy eligible areas. If that is done, however, we strongly recommend that contacting Katie or I for additional clarification on the focus area's eligibility. So we've already had one of these, kind of talk through them. I would say, you really just need to kind of send us what your proposed quarter-mile radius focus area is, and then Katie and I can kind of work through it with you. So submission guidance is next. Again, these are due, LOIs are due noon on Thursday, April 13th, 2017. They are required to be into DMD's office at that time. LOIs can be submitted early, but any late LOIs will not be accepted. And we want you to include 2 paper copies and 1 digital copy included on a flash drive. If you have any questions, any issues, etc., please let us know. But I would really, really, really strongly recommend that you do not wait till Thursday to submit this. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I know you guys will have a lot of things that are probably going to be finishing up or trying to be finalized, but I would really aim for that Wednesday as the due date as opposed to that Thursday. So right now, we have some questions that we're going to kind of tackle in the chat box. So if you can be patient, we'll kind of go through this. There was a comment on the loan payment, and we definitely want to work with organizations on those loan payments. The idea is that we still want to be committed to CDBG coming back and being able to be a revolving source that the city can use, especially as we see additional cuts to those CDBG resources. We want to make sure that something like CDBG is available long-term to provide that flexibility to projects. So we can be flexible on it. We want to work with all the organizations on it to determine how that loan would work and how it would fit in. Next question was, are the funds that will be allocated roughly divided equally among the 3 neighborhoods? So I think that's a misconception. There are only 1 neighborhood designated in 2018. That organization will then have 3 years of funding. The next year, if we still have a successful program, if we still have CDBG and home funds sufficient, we will designate another year. That said, another neighborhood, excuse me. And then so on, so on. So we would always have 3 active neighborhoods. The amount of funding would always depend on our federal allocation percentage, and it would be broken down based on that. Again, we always anticipate that a portion will be set aside and available for general construction funds. Again, it's very hard for us to give a solid dollar amount. The numbers that we're proposing are really based on what we have seen in the past couple years, and we're kind of projecting for the 2018 budget when we don't even have the 2017 budget. So,
so each year we anticipate going forward designating 1 new Lift Indy area. In year 1, we'd select 1 for our 2018 funds. They'd also have funds in 2019 and 2020. In 2019, we'd select a 2nd Lift Indy area. So the first one would still have funding going on since they have funding for 3 years, and we'd have another one with their first year of funding, Lift Indy area 2019. In the 3rd year, it kind of stabilizes. We have a 3rd Lift Indy area selected, our 2020 Lift Indy area. Lift Indy 2018 area would still have funding, their 3rd year of funding last year. The area selected in 2019 would have their 2nd year of funding, and then that 2020 Lift Indy area, their 1st year of funding would start. So going forward, we anticipate we'd have 3 at any one time receiving funding, but 1 designated each year. So hopefully that makes sense. We probably shouldn't have a graphic that shows that a little bit better, how that works, and we can include that in the PowerPoint we put on the website.
I think we really wanted to stress that to just focus on this neighborhood, the 2018 designee, that is really that's really what we're talking on right now. Next year is a long way away, and we really want to kind of just focus on this application at this point. There was one question, and is there some advantage to being in the 2nd year? We did anticipated providing a bit additional funds for that 1st and 2nd year, and then 3rd year kind of evens out. Again, that just depends on our federal funding. It can be an advantage, it can be a disadvantage, it just depends.
Yeah, it may depend on the timing of your project. Maybe you have a little bit more time to ramp up if you're selected in the 2nd year, but it's really based on you and what other funds you're able to line up.
Another question was, are expenditure deadlines something to be concerned about? Yes, 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 yes. If your projects are not, part of the reason we're giving this flexibility is also an understanding that the projects are getting done and are being spent and are kind of going on time. And we want to work with you to kind of get those things. But 1, communication is key. And 2, we really want to work with you to say, okay, when are these funds getting spent? How are these funds getting spent? Being on top of that. The development team might become really annoyed with DMB staff by the end of it, but with something that we want to stay on top of and make sure that we are staying within HUD regulations and we're not jeopardizing any of these funds.
Yeah, so the phasing is going to be really important. We're going to want to make sure you're realistic about when projects can get done, and that we set up your funding for particular projects in the right funding year so that you've spent down the funds with timing that makes sense for HUD's deadlines, so we don't lose any of the funding in the process. So really being upfront, realistic about deadlines and what you can get done when is really important.
We had another question. Can you explain the general construction on how much money available and the high-level process? It's very difficult to determine what kind of dollar amount's going to be available. We're kind of having some general estimates. It would probably be around maybe $3 million of total home and CDBG, but that's a very, very rough guess at this point. We really need to see what the 2017 budget is before we can make estimates on what the 2018 budget is. But again, I want to reiterate that there will always be a general construction round, that we're not getting rid of that. We always anticipate those projects being needed around Indianapolis, so that everyone can apply for that. And then another question, will the eligibility map keep the same boundaries each year? No. As the data evolves, as neighborhoods evolve, as we start putting different factors or indicators at different values, these are always going to evolve. So the map that you see today is by no means the map that's going to be there even next year, let alone 5 years from now. So we want to continue to be flexible and evolve towards these neighborhoods. So
yeah, and also get more up-to-date data as it comes out.
I'll give a couple more seconds for any final questions that can be put in there. Again, we will incorporate some of these as an FAQ or into our FAQ and update them if you have any questions. That we've incorporated a lot of potential questions we've had. We really strongly recommend reviewing that document in addition to all the LOI documents. But seeing no further questions, we just want to say that any additional questions can be sent via email to DMD. We're going to accumulate and provide an updated FAQ relating to all these questions. And again, you can see Katie and I's emails there as well. So again, seeing no questions, we want to thank you for being a part of this webinar and for the technical difficulties. We hope that if you are interested, again, remember that March 30th deadline to submit your neighborhood area. Submit us any questions. We really want to be able to kind of talk to you and work with you on it. And then hopefully we'll see some great proposals here in April. So thank you so much.